3 in the morning. That's when my world shattered. I wasn't supposed to be awake, but here I was, lying next to my husband David in our king-sized bed, in our perfectly decorated bedroom in suburban Denver, watching his phone light up on the nightstand. Again, and again. The blue glow cut through the darkness like a knife. David stirred slightly, his breathing deep and even. 8 years of marriage, and I knew every sound he made in his sleep. The way he'd mumble my name sometimes. The way he'd reach for me unconsciously. Tonight felt different. His phone buzzed once more. I couldn't help myself. My hand trembled as I reached across him, careful not to wake him. The screen showed 3 missed calls and 7 unread messages. All from M. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unlocked his phone. I knew his passcode, our anniversary date. How naive I'd been to think that meant something. The messages made my blood turn to ice water. Can't stop thinking about tonight. Your wife looked so happy at dinner. Poor thing. Don't worry, she's clueless. She has no idea what's happening right under her nose. When are you going to tell her? Or are we just going to keep playing house? I love you, David. This charade is killing me. I scrolled up, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. Months of messages. Photos I couldn't bear to look at. Plans made while I was at work, thinking my husband was having late meetings at his architecture firm. The woman's name was Miranda. I recognized her from David's company Christmas party last year. Tall, blonde, confident. She'd complimented my dress and asked about my job as a high school English teacher. We'd laughed together about David's terrible dancing. She'd been sleeping with my husband for 6 months. I placed the phone back exactly where it was, my entire body numb. David shifted beside me, throwing his arm across my waist like he'd done thousands of times before. But now, his touch felt like a brand, burning through my pajamas. I stared at the ceiling until dawn broke through our bedroom windows. The same windows we'd picked out together when we bought this house 5 years ago. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. When David's alarm went off at 6:30, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to him shower, humming the song that had played at our wedding. I felt him kiss my forehead before he left for work, whispering, "Love you, babe," like he did every morning. The front door closed with a soft click, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. 3 weeks later, I was a master actress. I'd perfected the role of the loving, oblivious wife. I made David his favorite breakfast every morning. I asked about his day with genuine interest, watching him lie to my face with practiced ease. I even initiated sex twice, studying his face in the darkness, wondering if he was thinking about her. But behind the performance, I was planning. I'd hired a private investigator named Janet Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in infidelity cases. The photos she'd given me were devastating but necessary. David and Miranda holding hands at restaurants across town, kissing in the parking lot of a hotel, entering her apartment building together on Tuesday afternoons when I was at school. Janet had been thorough. Bank records showing expensive dinners and hotel charges, text message logs that made my stomach turn, even evidence that David had been looking at apartments, clearly planning his exit strategy. Most women want to confront immediately, Janet had told me during our second meeting at a coffee shop downtown. But you're different. You're strategic. That's smart. I was strategic because I had to be. David made significantly more money than I did. The house was in both our names, but he'd contributed more to the down payment. I needed to protect myself financially, emotionally, and socially. The social aspect was crucial. Our entire friend group was intertwined. Couples we'd known since college, neighbors we'd barbecued with every summer, his family who'd embraced me as their own. David was charming, successful, well-liked. If this turned into a he said, she said situation, I wasn't confident I'd come out ahead. So I documented everything. I made copies of important financial documents. I opened my own bank account and slowly began transferring small amounts of money. I scheduled meetings with divorce attorneys, paying in cash and using my maiden name. Most importantly, I planned for David's 40th birthday party. The party had been in the works for months. David had mentioned wanting something special, and I jumped at the chance to throw him a surprise celebration. We'd rented the ballroom at the downtown Marriott, invited 80 people, hired a photographer, ordered a custom cake. Miranda would be there, of course. As his colleague and friend, she'd received an invitation weeks ago. She'd even offered to help with decorations, sending me enthusiastic texts about color schemes and centerpieces. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I addressed invitations and confirmed catering details, I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. This party would be David's celebration, all right, just not the kind he was expecting. The night before the party, David held me close in bed, stroking my hair. "Thank you for doing this," he whispered. "You're amazing, you know that? I'm so lucky to have you." I smiled in the darkness, my cheek pressed against his chest. "You have no idea how lucky," I whispered back. The party was perfect. The Marriott ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Round tables draped in navy blue linens filled the space, each centerpiece a carefully arranged bouquet of white roses, David's favorite. The bar hummed with activity as guests mixed cocktails and caught up on each other's lives. I wore the red dress David had bought me for our anniversary last year. The one he'd said made me look stunning. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup flawless. I looked like the picture of a devoted wife celebrating her husband's milestone birthday. Miranda arrived fashionably late, looking gorgeous in a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves. She greeted me with air kisses and a bright smile. "Sarah, you've outdone yourself. This is incredible." "Thank you so much," I replied, matching her enthusiasm. "David's going to be so surprised. He should be here any minute." I watched her scan the room, probably looking for him. Her fingers fidgeted with her clutch purse, and I noticed she kept checking her phone. Nervous energy radiated from her like heat. David arrived 20 minutes later, right on schedule. His genuine shock and delight at seeing the crowded ballroom filled with friends and family was almost enough to make me feel guilty. Almost. "Sarah, this is... wow. I can't believe you did all this." He pulled me into his arms and kissed me deeply, and I could taste the lie on his lips. The evening progressed beautifully. David worked the room like the social butterfly he'd always been, accepting congratulations and well wishes. I stayed close, playing the perfect hostess, making sure everyone had drinks and felt included. But I was watching, always watching. I saw how David's eyes found Miranda across the room, the way they exchanged meaningful glances when they thought no one was looking, how she touched his arm just a little too long when she congratulated him, how he made excuses to walk past her table. My college roommate Jessica approached me near the bar, champagne flute in hand. "You and David seem so happy," she said, slightly tipsy. "Marriage goals, honestly. Some of us are still trying to find what you two have." I squeezed her arm affectionately. "We're very blessed," I said, meaning every word in a way she couldn't understand. At 9 o'clock, I clinked my champagne glass with a knife, calling for attention. The room gradually quieted as guests turned toward me. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "David and I are overwhelmed by the love and support from everyone who matters most to us." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the familiar faces. Friends who'd stood up at our wedding, David's parents, who'd welcomed me into their family with open arms, colleagues who'd watched our relationship grow over the years. 40 years is a milestone worth celebrating, I continued. It's been 8 wonderful years of marriage, and I thought tonight would be perfect for sharing some special memories. I nodded to the AV technician I'd hired, who dimmed the lights and activated the large screen behind me. I put together a little slideshow of photos from our time together, I announced. But I also included some more recent pictures that I think really capture who David is as a person. The first slides were exactly what everyone expected. Our wedding day, honeymoon in Italy, holidays with family, vacations with friends. The crowd awed appropriately, and David beamed beside me. Then the photos changed. The first image of David and Miranda kissing in a restaurant parking lot drew gasps from the audience. The second photo, them entering a hotel together, caused someone to whisper, "Oh my God." By the third photo, the room was completely silent, except for the soft mechanical whir of the projector. I didn't look at David. I didn't need to. I could feel his panic radiating beside me like a physical force. "These photos were taken over the past 3 weeks," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I hired a private investigator after I discovered months of text messages between my husband and his colleague Miranda." I finally turned to look at David. His face was ashen, his mouth opening and closing without sound, including the message where she called me clueless. I continued, addressing the room but speaking directly to him. "Well, David, I made sure I wasn't clueless anymore. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Miranda had fled the ballroom within minutes, pushing through the stunned crowd like a woman escaping a fire. I watched her go with detached satisfaction, knowing that her reputation at David's firm, and in our social circle, was now permanently destroyed. David stood frozen beside me for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. When he finally found his voice, it came out as a strangled whisper. "Sarah, we need to talk. This isn't... Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I replied calmly, still holding the microphone. "Everyone here has seen exactly who you are." The guests began filing out quickly, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Some people approached me with shocked expressions and whispered words of support. Others avoided eye contact entirely, unsure how to navigate the social catastrophe they'd witnessed. David's parents lingered, his mother's face streaked with tears. She approached me hesitantly. "Sarah, honey, I'm so sorry. We had no idea." I hugged her tightly, genuinely moved by her distress. "I know you didn't, Mom. This isn't your fault." His father stood behind her, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "We raised him better than this," he said quietly. Within an hour, the ballroom was nearly empty except for hotel staff beginning cleanup. David and I stood alone among the scattered rose petals and abandoned champagne glasses. 8 years, Sarah. 8 years of marriage. How could you humiliate me like this? I stared at him, amazed by his audacity. How could I humiliate you? David, you've been cheating on me for 6 months. You were planning to leave me. You and your girlfriend called me clueless. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Were you going to keep lying until you found the courage to ask for a divorce? Or were you just going to disappear one day? He ran his hands through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. I was confused. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been having an affair, David. You've been lying to my face every single day. You made me feel crazy for asking questions about your late nights and weekend work calls. The fight went out of him then. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since I'd discovered his betrayal, he looked genuinely remorseful. I love you, Sarah. I know that sounds impossible to believe right now, but I do love you. You love the idea of me, I corrected. You love having a wife who takes care of the house and throws you birthday parties and makes you look good to your friends and family. But you don't love me enough to be faithful. You don't respect me enough to be honest. 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. I kept the house. David's guilt and his family's pressure had worked in my favor during negotiations. I also received half of his retirement savings and alimony that would help me maintain my lifestyle while I rebuilt my life. Miranda's career at David's firm had imploded spectacularly. Apparently, she hadn't been the first junior associate he'd had an inappropriate relationship with, and the company decided they couldn't risk the liability. She'd moved to another state, according to mutual friends. David had moved into a downtown apartment and was reportedly dating someone new already. Some people might have seen this as evidence that I'd been right to expose him so publicly. Others whispered that my methods had been too harsh, too calculated. I didn't care about the whispers. On a crisp autumn evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from my divorce attorney, confirming that the final paperwork had been filed. I thought about that night, 3 a.m, when I'd first seen those messages. The woman who'd lain in bed pretending to sleep while her world crumbled around her seemed like a stranger now. I'd been clueless then, it was true. Clueless about the depth of David's deception, about how little my 8 years of devotion had meant to him, about how easily he could look me in the eye and lie. But I wasn't clueless anymore. I was free.